Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to read from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Part 2, Two Avatars, Chapter 21. Sage Kardam sees Lord Vishnu. Sage Kardam, desiring a wife, prays to Lord Vishnu, who appears before him. Vishnu informs him that in due course he will be visited by a great leader of mankind, Swambhuva Manu, who will offer him his daughter's hand in marriage. The Lord also says that he will become the sage's son. A calm quiet descended along with the night. Maitreya stretched his legs in front of him, lifting his arms above his head to flex his shoulders and back. He had been speaking for some time without hardly moving. Immersed in thought, Vidur stoked the fire, the leaping flames illuminating his weathered features. Verses 1 and 2. Sitting back, Vidur said, Esteemed Maitreya, I have heard that in Swambhuva Manu's dynasty, many devotee kings appeared who carefully protected their subjects with spiritual knowledge. By hearing about them, one becomes enlightened. Please tell me about these descendants who multiplied through. You previously told me that Swambhuva Manu had two great sons, Priyavrat and Uttanpad. These two protected the world consisting of 7 islands according to religious principles. Verses 3 to 5. O sinless one, you also told me that one of Swambhuva Manu's daughter, Devahuti, married Kardam. I have heard that Devahuti was advanced in the 8-fold yoga system. I am eager to know how many children did the great sage Kardam begot in his wife. I would also like to know about the progeny of the two revered sons of Brahma, Ruchi and Daksha, who respectively married Akuti, Prasuti, Swambhuva's other daughters. Verses 6 to 8. Maitreya said, commanded by Brahma to beget children, the esteemed Kardam purified himself by practicing penance on the bank of the Saraswati. He heard about the glorified, meditated and worshipped Vishnu for 10,000 years. Then in the beginning of Satyayug, the lotus-eyed Lord, who also gives all benedictions to his surrendered devotees, appeared before him. Kardam recognized him from his descriptions in the Vedas. Vidur listened attentively as Maitreya described what had happened next. Verses 9 to 11. It seemed to Kardam that 10,000 suns had descended to earth. He shielded his eyes, speaking occasionally to discern the source of the brilliance. As his eyes became accustomed to the light, the sage saw an effulgent person wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies. He was clad in spotless yellow silk, and his face resembled a lotus flower, fringed with slick, dark locks of curly hair. His head was adorned with a crown and earrings. In 3 of his hands he had a conch, disc and mace, and in the 4th a white lily. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood, captivating Kardam's heart. The sage's bodily hair rose as a surge of ecstasy surged through him. The person before him exactly matched the descriptions of the Supreme Godhead he had read in the Vedas. Kardam gazed in awe. Was this Vishnu himself or one of his associates? Examining him, he saw 3 golden streaks found only on the Lord's chests, and Vishnu's famous Kaustubh gem suspended from his neck. Then he saw that he was standing on the shoulders of Garud, the Supreme Lord's eagle carrier. This was surely Vishnu. Verses 13 and 14. My dear Lord, my sight has become perfect. By seeing you, great yogis meditate for many lifetimes in the hope of such a vision. By worshipping your lotus feet, one can cross the ocean of material suffering. Only the deluded worship you to obtain trivial and momentary sense pleasures, which can be had even by persons rotting in hell. Yet you kindly bestow your mercy even on such fools. The sage hesitated. He had worshipped Vishnu, hoping for a suitable wife. How could he ask such a trifling, mundane boon from the Supreme Lord? Like a loving father, Vishnu smiled encouragingly. He knew Kardam wanted to marry so that he could execute his service of populating the universe with pious progeny. Verse 15, his head lowered. Kardam said, although I know nothing material should be asked of you, I nevertheless desire to marry a girl of like disposition. To satisfy my lust, I seek your shelter. Like a desire tree, you are the source of everything. Vishnu said, my dear devotee, since you have now seen me, why do you not ask for liberation? Verse 16, Kardam replied, my lord, I am not ready for liberation, as I still have unsatisfied material desires. Religious principles are established by you so that conditioned souls who have such longings may fulfill them according to Vedic rules that will help us become eligible for liberation. Like a bull bound through the nose with a rope, I am bound by your instructions concerning material life. Vishnu's eyes twinkled. Since it is proper to follow my instructions for sense enjoyment, why did you earlier criticize those who ask me for that? Verse 17, Kardam hesitated. It seemed the Lord was testing him. After a few moments' thought, he said, whether one follows religious principles or neglects them, if his only goal in life is sense gratification, he is no better than animals. He will simply suffer in material existence. Your devotees therefore seek your protection by drinking the intoxicating nectar of your qualities. And activities in discussions with one another. This frees one from sensual desires. Vishnu smilingly shed tears of affection for Kardam. Verse 18, Kardam added, time is like a great wheel which has the impersonal Brahman as its axle, the 13 lunar months as spokes, 360 days and nights as joints, 6 seasons as the rim, unlimited seconds for edges, and the 3 groups of 4 months as the nave. The wheel's revolution cuts short the creation's lifespan. However, despite its tremendous velocity, time cannot destroy your devotees' duration of life, for they always discuss your glories. Verse 19. Tears welled in Kardam's eyes as he meditated on Vishnu's greatness. In choked voice, he said, everything is executed by you alone. Although you are one, you have various energies through which you create, maintain, and wind up the material creation. Kardam sighted a spider in nearby shrubbery weaving its web. He said, the spider creates a web with its own saliva, and yet it remains separate from the web. Similarly, you create the gods by your material energies, which are controlled by your spiritual potency. At the time of annihilation, you wind everything back up. Verses 20 and 21. Thinking again of his desire for a wife, the sage said, my lord, I know it is not your wish to implicate your devotee in material life. You manifest the material creation because we ignorant souls want material enjoyment. Since such yearning exists in my mind, if it is not satisfied, I will remain disappointed and frustrated. Therefore, now you have appeared before me in your eternal form, adorned with a splendid wreath of tulsi leaves. Kindly bestow your causeless mercy on me. After fulfilling my desire, please rescue me from material entanglement. Lord, I repeatedly offer my respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet, which alone can fulfill all desires. By your energy, you have expanded these material worlds to give all living entities an opportunity to simultaneously satisfy the desires and realize you. Thus we can become detached from material happiness. Kardam hung his head. He hung his head and His wish to marry and have children was hardly an elevated desire. It was foolish to want anything but to serve Krishna, but at the same time he did not want to be a pretentious renunciant. Better to dovetail his desire in Krishna's service and increase the world's population. Verses 22 and 23, standing on Garud, Vishnu shone splendidly, his eyebrows moved gracefully as he showered affection on the sage. He replied with words as sweet as nectar. As a super soul in your heart, I already knew your desire. It is my nature to satisfy my sincere devotees who worship me properly with body and mind, if their desires are not detrimental to their devotional service. Thus I have already made all arrangements. Kardam looked up in surprise. Verse 24, tears of love glistened in Vishnu's lotus petals' eyes. My dear sage Kardam, you are an exemplar for all living entities. Know for certain that those who, like you, worship me with their body, mind, and words always achieve success, even if they desire material boons. Kardam dropped to his knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. Verses 25-26. Smiling benevolently, Vishnu continued, Brahma's son Emperor Swayambhuva Manu is famous for his good qualities. Living in Brahmavarta, he rules the earth with its 7 oceans. The day after tomorrow, that celebrated emperor who is expert in religious activities will come here with his queen Shatrupa. Verses 27-29, he has beautiful black-eyed daughter of marriageable age, of high character and good qualities. She is seeking a worthy husband. My dear sir, you are exactly suitable for her, and her parents will deliver her as your wife. That princess is just the type for whom you have long been hankering. She will soon be yours and will serve you to your heart's content. She will bear you 9 daughters, in whom the sages will duly beget more progeny. Kardam felt a pang of anxiety. Having obtained such a wife, would he ever become detached? Verse 30, understanding his heart, Vishnu said, to sanctify your activities, engage the results of your work in my service. By following this instruction, your heart will become fully cleansed and you will finally attain my personal association. Kardam's brow creased. How should he offer the fruits of his work to the Lord? Verse 31, Vishnu said, while you are in household life, act compassionately to all living entities by giving food, clothing, and wealth. Also teach transcendental knowledge to your friends, family members, and neighbors. You will thus attain self-realization. Later you can accept sannyas and travel widely from home to home, enlightening others, teaching them how to take shelter of me. Convince them I will always protect them and thereby make them fearless. By so doing, you will see yourself and all existence in me and me in you. Kardam carefully considered Vishnu's instruction. What did it mean to attain self-realization? From within his heart, the Lord gave him understanding. Ignorance means to think I am independent of Krishna, and all that I possess is meant for my own enjoyment. Self-realization means to realize that I and everything I own, including my own relations, are Krishna's. Therefore, everything should be engaged in his service. When the householder shows compassion to others, he uses his God-given opulence in a way which pleases Krishna, who awards him transcendental realization. Thus, by acting in knowledge, one realizes that knowledge. Kardam pondered further. What did Vishnu mean by saying, you will see yourself and all existence in me and me in you? Slowly the answer dawned on him. There is no difference between Vishnu's interest, that of the universe, and of Kardam himself. By satisfying Vishnu, one automatically satisfies the whole creation and oneself. The Lord wants every living being to always think of him, be his devotee, and worship him. By acting as Vishnu desires and teaching others to do likewise, one receives his blessings. Verse 32, Vishnu smiled benevolently. Here also some more blissful news. First, your wife Devahuti will give birth to 9 daughters, then I shall become your son. I shall compose the Tattva Samhita, an exposition of Sankhya philosophy, which I will instruct to my mother Devahuti. The moon cast faint shadows around where Maitreya and Vidur sat. Crickets sounded in the long grass. A pair of hyenas emerged from the forest, their red eyes shining in the night. only to retreat on seeing the fire. Verse 33, Maitreya continued, after telling Kardam he would appear as his son Vishnu, left the sage by Lake Bindu Sarovar, which was surrounded by river Saraswati. Vidur asked, how could Kardam directly see Vishnu? The scriptures say the Lord is Adhokshaja, one who is never perceived by material senses. Maitreya replied, my dear Vidur, you also saw Krishna. This is because you, like Kardam, are a great devotee. Those who have practiced bhakti in the proper way and those whose senses are thus purified of material contamination can perceive the Lord, others cannot. Verses 34 and 32 and 35. Vidur's heart surged with love at the remembrance of Krishna, and Maitreya resumed his narration. While Kardam stood looking on, Vishnu left by the Vaikuntha pathway, which is extolled by liberated souls. The sage stood entranced, listening to the Samaveda hymns created by Garud's flapping wings. After Vishnu's departure, Kardam continued to live by Bindu Sarovar. Verses 36-37. In the meantime, Swayambhuva Manu, along with his wife Shatarupa, mounted his chariot, which was decorated with golden ornaments. Accompanied by his daughter, he travelled across the earth. On the very day foretold by Vishnu, they reached Kardam's hermitage, after the sage had just completed his vow of celibacy. Verses 38-39. At that time, the river Saraswati flooded the sacred Bindu Sarovar. Hosts of eminent sages came there to worship the lake and drink her sweet water. Vidur raised a hand. Maitreya had originally described how Kardam performed penance on the bank of river Saraswati, not Lake Bindu Sarovar. He asked, when and how did Bindu Sarovar appear and why is it sacred? Maitreya replied, if you remember, when Vishnu was speaking to Kardam, he shed tears. These became Bindu Sarovar, whose nectarine water cures all material diseases. Vidur remembered how the river Ganges is similarly considered sacred because it is Vishnu's perspiration falling from his toe. Since the Ganges and Bindu Sarovar both came from the Lord's spiritual body, they are transcendental and worthy of worship. Verses 40 and 41. Maitreya continued, the lake shore was surrounded by clusters of auspicious trees and creepers, rich in fruits and flowers of all seasons. They afforded shelter to pious animals and birds. The area resounded with joyous birdsong broadcasting Vishnu's glories. After drinking honey, intoxicated black bees hummed loudly. Gleefully, peacocks danced and cuckoos called one another. Verse 42-43. Bindu Sarovar was adorned by flowering trees such as Kadam, Champak and Ashok, as well as young mango trees, all producing fragrant flowers. The melodious cries of waterfowl and cranes made the surrounding area amenable for spiritual practice. The lake's shores abounded with musk deer emitting an intoxicating aroma. Roaming nearby was a sacred breed of wild cows known as gavyas, whose tail hair is used in temple to fan the deity. Other breeds of deer such as boars, porcupines, elephants, baboons, lions, monkeys, and mongooses also abounded. It was in this beautiful setting that Swayambhuva Manu found Kardam. Listen now as I describe their meeting. Verses 45 to 47. Kardam poured the last ladle of ghee into the sacrificial fire. The ritual completed, he returned to the shaded entrance of his simple hermitage and sat in Yogasana. His body shone brilliantly in the early morning sun as he recalled his recent encounter with Vishnu, remembering Vishnu's affectionate sidelong glance and his pleasing words, which were like cooling moon rays. His heart melted since their meeting. His body was no longer emaciated. As Kardam sat in yogic trance, Swayambhuva Manu's chariot rumbled to the outskirts of the clearing. To avoid disturbing the many yogis inhabited the area, his army set up camp there, accompanied by only his wife and daughter. Manu carefully drove his chariot in to the clearing. Devahuti saw the tall sage first. Despite his disheveled appearance, his handsome features distinguished him from the other ascetics. Struck by his large eyes, which resembled lotus petals, she pointed him out to her parents, the emperors Emperor beamed in delight. Although the sage was clad in rags and seemed soiled, he looked like an unpolished gem. Devahuti was right. This was surely Kardam. He perfectly fitted the descriptions they had heard. Instructing his wife and daughter to stay on the chariot, Swambhuva approached the sage on foot and fell prostrate before him. Verse 48. Hearing the deep voice of offering homage, Kardam opened his eyes. A powerful warrior, his head adorned with a golden, jewel-encrusted crown, lay before him, his outstretched hands touching Kardam's feet. The visitor rose to his knees and, with folded palms and lowered head, introduced himself. Holy sage, know me to be Emperor Swambhuva Manu, your humble servant. Kardam raised his right hand in benediction. Introducing himself in return, he welcomed the emperor. Swambhuva said, O saintly one, today I am successful because I meet in person the form of powerful austerity. The sage replied, It is I who am successful after seeing you, who Vishnu has empowered to protect the universe. Verse 49. The two men sat in silence for a few moments. Swambhuva wondering how he should put his proposal before Kardam, and the sage remembering Vishnu's prophecy. Kardam spoke first, addressing the emperor in pleasing tones. Verses 52 to 51. My lord, your tour is surely intended to defend the virtuous and kill the wicked. Since you embody Lord Hari's protecting energy, I offer my respects as you represent Vishnu. O Emperor, you resemble the gods in your good qualities. You are majestic like the sun, famous like the moon god, and invincible like the fire god. Like Indra, you are the lord of all. You enter everywhere like Vayu, the wind god. You punish the sinful like Yam, the god of death. You protect the righteous like Dharma, the god of religion, and like Varun, the god of water. You are deep with hidden treasure. Verses 52 to 54. Mounted on your victorious jeweled chariot, you traverse the earth like the brilliant sun, twanging your fearful bow. You lead a huge army whose trampling feet cause the earth to tremble. By your very presence, you instill fear into the wicked. If not for you, all the moral codes of Varnashram created by Vishnu would be broken by rogues and rascals. Verses 55 to 56. Mighty Emperor, if not for your vigilant protection, unrighteous men who hanker only for money would be unopposed, tormented by the greedy actions of such sinful men. The world's population would be destroyed. Although I know you travel to inspect your kingdom, I think there must be some special reason you have stopped at my hermitage. Kindly tell me the purpose for your visit. I shall do my best to fulfill your wishes. And this brings us to the end of chapter 21. Thank you for joining. We will resume our reading from chapter 22 next time. Kardam marries Devahuti. And our prayers to Lord for everyone who is fighting with this menace raging, which is COVID. So, and hopefully people will get well and will receive the hope, the hope, prayers, and the medicine and everything which is needed. And our prayers to Lord for Pankajangri Prabhu, one of the head pujaris of Sridham Mayapur. He's very critical for, and take your leave. Ariyam Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.